Okay. Okay, can you guys see me now? Test, test. Let's see what we got. Hello, if you could hear me, shoot up a quick message there, let me know. Check one. All right. Okay, sweet. Sorry about that, guys. YouTube is being a total pain in my butt. Something's wonky with these scheduled things, so hopefully this is working. Cool. What's up, Tom? How we doing? All right. Once again, what's up? This is Mike Deary from Rock Guitar Power, and yes, I am. Sweet. Cool. Hopefully didn't lose too many people on that wait. I do apologize. This thing is being finicky as can be, but it looks like we're working now. So let me just go ahead and warm up for a little bit and do a quick jam, and then we're going to get in talking about bar chords. I got a bunch of cool stuff planned for you guys. So, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, type them into the chat, and I'll cover anything you guys want to know. So let's do a quick jam here while everyone else kind of gets settled in. Oops. Get the audio coming through correctly. All right, here we go. Okay, so just a quick little warm-up. I don't want to jam for too long because I know we're already a little bit behind, but how's everybody doing? Hopefully more of the other people will kind of file in and find the feed and all that other stuff. But looks like you guys could hear me good and you could see me good, so hello, it's Mike Deary from Rock Guitar Power and Super Guitar Licks. So, what I wanted to cover today, or at least start, cool, hey Stella. So what I wanted to start off with today is talking about bar chords, all right? And bar chords are super, super, super important because they utilize the huge advantage on guitar, which is movable shapes and movable patterns. And bar chords is something that a lot of people struggle with when they're first getting started and even getting into that kind of intermediate, range of being a player, because it's technical, it's not easy. But the nice thing about it is it's movable. Bar chords are movable, and we're going to get more into that as we go. But the thing that it does is it also opens up a lot of doors to being able to play a lot of songs that you'll want to learn how to play. And because a lot of songs use chords that just are not available as open chord shapes. So usually when people first start out, you're learning all your typical open chords, like your A major, A minor, G major, D. All of these shapes here that I'm doing are open chord shapes, all right? They involve open strings. They're not movable. So if you take a C major shape and you take this whole thing and you move it up 2 frets, it's not, excuse me, it doesn't become a D major. I can't keep taking this shape and move it up and keep calling it a major chord. It always changes because there's open strings involved. Now, bar chords, a whole different story. If we take a bar chord here on G and move it all up 2 frets, same exact shape, now I have an A major, all right? So we go G major to A major, just like that, all right? So that is the example of a movable bar chord shape. Now this is a major chord, and we're going to get into all the different shapes and patterns that we utilize. The nice thing to know is that there's only really 2 types of bar chords that we really want to focus on: major chord and minor chord, all right? And if you guys have had, trouble or any questions on bar chords, again, type them into the chat and I'll get real specific as we go. But the first thing I wanted to do is talk about power chords. And this, while not a total bar chord, it's a great place to start because chances are if you've started learning guitar a little bit, you've seen power chords, all right? And let me know if you guys could see my my little image there of the power chord. I got a couple new things that are some new tech that I got going on, and hopefully got this image popping up. So with power chords, we got a root, a fifth, and an octave. And these usually sound good with distortion. So we got a root. We're going to start this on the 5th fret. So if I go to root, a fifth, and an octave, that's what makes up a power chord. Now there's really not much barring going on because generally, I'm just trying to look at the view here, because generally in a bar chord, you're using your finger to bar and push down a bunch of different strings. In a power chord, you really don't need to bar anything. However, if you're used to this power chord shape or you've done it before, it's going to start getting your first finger in the position that you want it to be in to work for you as a bar chord, all right? The only difference is when I'm doing it as a power chord, the first finger is actually trying to mute the last 3 strings. So in other words, you can hear how those are kind of muted. So if I hit everything, they all ring out. Well, the only notes that ring out are the first 3 strings that I played, all right? The other 3 are muted. Now, if I get good at this shape, my first finger is already in a really good position for doing a bar chord, all right? So if you look at the shapes that we have on screen, what you want to do to practice these, and this is going to be totally related to getting a bar chord sounding good, is to play each note one at a time and just hold the position and let the notes ring out. So in other words, all right, one more time. All right, hit them, hold them, and just let it keep going. By keeping your hand in this position, it's going to really help it to get used to the shape and get your hand just used to staying like this, okay? Hey Dwayne, how you doing? Thanks for saying hi and welcome. So we got a power chord here and we're just holding it down. If I move this shape down a string each, it's still a power chord, only rooted on the A string. Now this again is a good example of a movable chord shape, all right? So if I take this, we have the same exact shape and we're just moving it around. So once you get that shape good, it's very easy to start moving things around. All right, so a power chord, if you haven't checked them out already, is a really good way to start your going down the whole, the whole path of getting movable shapes and bar chords down, all right? Now, the other thing to note is that the name of the chord is the note that's on your first finger. All right, this might be some basic stuff, but it's super important before we dive into a little bit more of the advanced shapes and techniques. So in other words, whatever note you're on the big string or the A string, all right, is the note of that chord. So let's say I want to play an A power chord. I need to find the note A on the big string. So we're going to go E, F, G, A, and then do my shape. So now we have an A power chord. All right? So now if I want to make it a G, all I got to do is find the note G, which is on the 3rd fret, and slide it down a whole step. All right, pretty easy. So we go A, then we go G. We go back to A, back to G. So that's the idea. The only notes you really need to get to know well on the guitar neck are the notes that are on the big string, the big E string, and the A string, because those are where you're going to be rooting all of these bar chords. So while you might look at the whole guitar neck and feel a little bit overwhelmed because there's all the notes everywhere, you really want to just focus on the big string and the string after, and really only up to the 12th fret. You don't do too many chords up higher than that. You know, now you're getting into soloing territory. So just kind of breaking the neck down to these 2 strings and just this much of the neck helps make the whole process seem less daunting. So we've talked about power chords. We know now where to do them and move them. The other couple technique things to mention. If you look at my hand from the back side, make sure I could see this, and let me know if you guys could still see and hear everything okay. I'm pretty sure we're good to go, but just to be sure. So anyways, if we come in here, you can see that my thumb is really far down. It's about at the middle of the guitar neck. I do not want my thumb coming way up high when I'm learning to do these chords. It's really bad technique, and it restricts the rest of your fingers, okay? I don't want to be like this when I'm trying to get a shape down. I want to bring my thumb down and my wrist around, okay? I'll be saying that a lot because it's one of those things that as I've taught students, I just kind of keep needing to remind people that. That's the way it goes. So just take your time with it and keep remembering to bring your thumb down and your wrist around, all right? I say a lot of times it's almost like rolling a bowling ball where you got to kind of keep your wrist around the neck like this so that you could have this technique available to you and that your fingers are very easy to kind of move wherever they need to, all right? So the next thing to talk about are the actual major bar chord shapes. So I'm going to come off my distortion and let's change it up here. So we'll get rid of our power chords there and we're going to get into our 2 bar chords, all right? And by the way, let me just pop up my screen real quick because I wanted to navigate to the website and show you where you could find more of these lessons, okay? Because in Rock Guitar Power, we have a whole bunch of lessons that are going to be totally based on bar chords, all right? So once this thing pops up, which it should pretty soon, so we're going to come over to, let me make sure this comes up. And are you guys seeing the images on the screen? Let me know, or someone type into the chat there. I want to make sure you guys are seeing these okay as I'm going through them. All right. Oh, I know why. Let's try this. And boom. Hope. There we go. Okay, so what I have here is just my screen, and I'm showing the website for Rock Guitar Power. So one of the places to navigate to, if you come up to Rock Guitar Power and you go to your dashboard once you log in Volume 2, there's going to be a lesson here on major and minor bar chords, okay? So if you want more input on and training on how to do these, this is the place to find it, okay? We have our chord shapes here, which I'm going to go into in a minute, and we have a nice video, a 10-minute lesson that's going to talk about a lot of things I'm going to talk about here. Also in Lesson 1 is where you could find the lesson on power chords, okay? If you're not already familiar with them, check it out here, lesson number 6. These are going to tell you how to do the power chords, which are really fundamental before you get into the full bar chord shapes, all right? So let's go dive in now. So if we go back to Volume 2, we're going to jump into major minor bar chords. And boom. All right. So, but let's go back now and show our two shapes that we have on screen. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about is the major bar chord. And as you can see, well, the major and minor, there's two types of major main bar chords that we use. Seventh chords is also another very popular set of bar chords, but we're going to keep it simple for now and just talk about the major and minor. So in both of these shapes, if we just look at the E string first, so let's hide our A string and just look at the E string. So if we're looking at this, let's again start at the 5th fret. These again are movable shapes. So once you get it down in one position, you can move them around, and they allow you to play a lot of songs that you wouldn't already have been able to play with any other type of chord shape. Start at the 5th fret, and we're on the big string. We're going to start with a power chord. Okay? So that shape we just covered, you want to start with that shape first. Then what you're going to do is add the middle finger down on the 6th fret of the G string. All right? So there we have those 4 notes. Now comes the bar. And this is where I want to lay this first finger nice and flat. You can see from that angle, you can see that my first finger is nice and flat, and what it's doing is pushing down the bottom 2 strings. All right? There we go. So that is what the full major bar chord should sound like. And also, just like power chords, wherever my first finger is, that's going to be the note that the chord is, or that's the chord. So if I'm on the 5th fret, that's an A. So right now, we're playing an A major chord. If I were to play this as an open chord, it's the same exact notes. What happens is the notes are stacked a little bit differently, so you do get generally just a little bit different sound, but overall, that is the same exact chord, A major, A major. But now, we can take this shape and slide it down to the note G, which is the 3rd fret on the big string. And now, we have a G major chord. All right? So, oops, hang on one sec. And let me know if you guys are still seeing this. I'm getting a little bit of an error here. So hopefully it's still working. All right. So anyways, again, do me a favor if you guys are there and just message if you could see me good. Let me write this in real quick. I want to make sure you guys are there. Yeah. All right. Cool. Awesome. Okay, cool. So, thanks, Tom. So, if we got, let's see, other than E and A chords, what are the chords? Good, good. Okay, cool. I'll get to that question, Tom, in a second. So, if we now look at 3rd fret on G, same shape, I just move it up and move it down. Now, the other things to keep in mind as far as technique goes, all right? Finger. What you want to do is, if I look at it from this angle, the middle knuckle here, okay? This guy right here, that knuckle needs to be flattened out. And it actually needs to be almost like a ramp, almost like a ski slope. If I look at my hand from this angle, all right, I'm seeing it kind of come up like this. Okay? So it takes amount of steady strain on your finger. So it's certainly not the most comfortable shape. And when you're learning them, it is uncomfortable at first because you have to, a lot of it is like holding a push-up halfway. Okay, if you do a push-up and you lock your arms out, or if you go all the way and rest on your chest, you could stay in those positions really long. Certainly on your chest pretty much forever. But if I hold my hands like this, there's only so long I can hold my muscles like that. That's what's happening when you're doing this with your finger. So it is normal for your finger to get tired if you're holding this shape correctly. But as with anything, the consistent practice of it is going to make your finger stronger, and you're going to be able to do that shape for longer. Just like that, okay? So, just some tips to get that sounding better. And again, I'm always bringing my thumb nice and low. You can see how it's coming down and I'm bringing my wrist around, okay? So, some nice tips there to try to get these chords sounding better. A lot of times you could struggle with them, they get frustrating, but keep in mind the two big things. Get your thumb down, get your wrist around, and the third thing, keep that finger nice and straight. But now let's take a look at what is the benefit of this. So I got an A major, I got a G major, and I got an F major if I go down to the first fret, and I come back up. If I were to do those as open chords, I could do A major, G major, F major, G major, A major. So by doing it that way, you can see that I have totally different shapes and my fingers need to jump all around. When I get this good with bar chords, okay, I'm just able to move this shape down and everything's a lot easier, all right? The other thing, when you're practicing these, is to hit every note one at a time. All right? That's going to get the notes out nice and smooth and make sure they all ring out. Okay? All right, so to answer your question, other than the E and A string chords and triads, what other chords could you use to spice up your chord progression? Also, could you explain how to use inversions while improvising? So, good questions, and certainly a little bit more advanced. The other one to kind of talk about what other chords could you use to spice up your playing. Seventh chords are a great way to do that. I don't have too much right now on seventh chords. I'm going to be doing a new course in rock guitar power on seventh chords. But just to give you a quick example of some other chords to spice it up, let's go into the, let me make sure you can still see my screen. Oop, let me go back to my screen so you guys could see where I'm at here. And let me know if this is helpful. Let me know if this is, if you guys are getting good stuff out of this. All right, so we're going to go to the Guitar Pro Jam, because we got some cool chord progressions going on inside of there. All right, so let's go find something that's got some spicy, fun chords. So here's a good example of something to spice it up. So we got a B minor seventh chord and an E seventh chord, all right? So this is, again, another type of bar chord because my first finger, or my ring finger is barring all of the bottom four strings, okay? We're looking at the B minor 7, I'm on the 7th fret. My middle finger is going to come up and over onto the big string. And again, the bar is happening with this finger because it's barring and pushing a lot of notes down. So if you look at the other shapes that we did before, if I bring up my minor chord, all right, this is where you can now substitute a minor chord for a minor 7th chord. So if we look at our, let's turn this guy on and bring it down. So if we look at our minor bar chord there on the E string, okay, we have this shape here, which is B minor. Now if I make that a B minor 7, now it might not sound a whole lot different. But there's little variances that really do spice things up. The E7 is going to have a lot more spice to it. So this is a major chord with a 7th note from the scale added to it, all right? And it's actually a flatted 7th. So anyways, if we were to do the E major chord on the A string, so instead of looking at these shapes, let's look at our A string. So if we look at a major chord on the A string, we're using our ring finger to bar these 3 notes. All right, so that's a major bar chord on the A string. Now, if we're really doing totally different shapes, if you know theory a little bit better and you understand what notes make up each chord, then the sky is the limit, because then you could find all sorts of different ways to rearrange chords and get different chord voicings from them. This is where a lot of jazz players and just jazz in general comes into play, along with the complexity of jazz, because you're not doing a lot of these standard bar chords. You're really getting into unique voicings, because a lot of that is also tailored to the melody notes that are being played, and you're making chords that interact with the melody, so everything's kept really close and tight. All right, helps. Tom, let me know if that does help. And so let's see, I had another question here too. And also, can you explain how to use inversions while improvising? So inversions, something that, again, definitely a more advanced technique. I don't do a ton of it in my playing, or at least have studied a lot of it. Again, it's something that's really popular in jazz. Also, if you come from a piano background, which was my first instrument, inversions are used a lot more. For the sake of keeping things simple for the majority of players out there, don't worry about inversions until you master these bar chord shapes, okay? Because basically what you're doing with an inversion, let's just take a very quick, super easy example, okay? Where I don't even need to change anything. This is kind of cheating, but it's basically to outline the idea of what an inversion is, okay? If I play a major chord, the A major chord on the big A string, and I start by playing the note A on the big E string, that is a root position chord. So I'm going root, 5th, root, and then I'm playing my 3rd. If I do and just start with the A string, you can consider that an inversion, because I'm basically putting the 5th on the bottom of the chord instead of the root. All right? So again, that's the idea of it. Now, any real guitar player would probably crucify me for saying that's actually an inversion, only because you're taking the same exact shape, you're just highlighting different notes first. But again, essentially, when you're using inversion, you're just stacking the notes differently. And again, it's a little bit more of an advanced technique, and if you understand the notes that are within a chord, it's a lot easier to create inversions and kind of do different voicings. Where this really comes into play is when you're trying to create an arrangement or even just a solo line where doing a bar chord is not convenient, or the notes that you want to play around it are not close by, okay? For example, let's take this chord here, just let's do back to A major. Let's say I just want to jam on this and then interject it with a little melody. Okay, simple. Now, you could see that if I stick to the standard shape that I was playing with the bar chord, I have to kind of reset my hand, take it off, and get used to, and get in a different position to play the melody on the little string, because this bar chord shape is really not that close to the melody that I need to play. So if we do an inversion of this, or a different voicing, I'm going to use this shape right here. It's essentially the same chord, I'm just not doing it as a bar, and I'm not using my first finger and ring finger. I'm just taking the bottom 4 strings, so I'm playing 7, 6, 5, and I am actually doing a bar with my first finger because it's barring the B and E string, okay? Like that. Now, if I play this as the chord, you can see that I don't need to move as much as all right? So that's a simple example of how inversions and you know, are there for you for improvising so that you could get around playing melodies and solo lines that aren't really easy to play if you're sticking with the standard bar chord shapes, okay? Let me know if that makes sense. Let me know if you have any other questions on it. And of course, everybody else, let me know if you guys have any other questions regarding what we talked about there, all right? So what I want to do now is jump into an example of a chord progression that uses bar chords like we were looking at, okay? Cool, hang on. Tom got another question. What practice techniques can I use to make inversion chords on the spot, or you need to study those separately? Both. The first thing that you could do is take the chord shape that you start with, okay? So in other words, we got this A major chord, right? So, and you're welcome. So what you want to do here is just look at maybe, okay, instead of playing this full shape, in other words, using all 6 strings, okay, try maybe using just 3, maybe the last 3, okay, and look at the notes that are being pushed down with the full bar chord shape, and then just see how you can make it easier. I could do it like this, for example. I could use these 3 notes, or these 3 fingers. I could do it like this. So now maybe, so let's say I wanted to get down to this note G. I can't do that with this bar chord shape. So the first thing to do is look at the bar chord shape that you start with and just look at the notes that are there and see how else can I arrange my fingers to play just a small section of that chord, okay? That way you're not needing to study all the theory. You're not going to feel like you need to understand all the notes and things that go into it. But right after that, you do really want to break it down. If this is the type of thing that does interest you, take the time to look at what notes make up a chord. There's not many. There's only 3 notes in a major or minor chord. In a major chord, we have the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, okay? Because there's 6 strings, what we do a lot in our chord shapes is repeat notes. So in other words, if I'm on the 5th fret of the big string, already I'm doing a root, a 5th, and then a root again, all right? So that already is going to show that I'm repeating the root note. Then I add my 3rd, then that helps. And again, anytime you guys have questions, just jump in and ask them, all right? So let's now get out of this guy, and what we're going to do is go over to the Pro Jam, and we're going to look at one of the jams that are in there. So if we go to guitar, the dashboard, we go to the Guitar Pro Jam. This, by the way, is one of my most fun, you know, courses on here because there's just so much cool stuff that are in these lessons here. So let's get this guy to load. There we go. And what we're going to do is look at the funky C minor jam, all right? This is actually a chord progression in jam based off of the song Get Lucky by Pharrell. And it's just a super cool, fun chord progression, and here it is, all right? So if we look at this guy, I'm going to call up the chord progression too so we could see it a little bit easier. Let's take a look at it here. See if we could bring this guy down. Awesome, there we go. Okay. So if you notice, these are the shapes we looked at earlier. So we got a C minor chord rooted on the big E string, and the note C is found at the 8th fret. So the first thing that you do when you look at a chord, let's say I didn't have the charts that are below those names right there. If I only had C and a little M next to it, and I know that's a C minor, the first thing I'm going to do is see if I could find the note C, either on the big string or the A string. So if we're on the E string, we're going to move over. So it's E, F, G, A, B, and then C on the 8th fret. Now that I have the note C, all I need to do is remember what is the shape for a minor bar chord, and it's this one right here. All right, so now I got my full C minor chord. All right, making sure you guys can see that too. Let me scoot over just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so C minor on the A string. The next is an E flat major chord, and this one we're going to do on the A string. So if I take my A string, open is A, then we got B, C, D, E, and if we flat, we're going to go down one to the 6th fret. All right? Now, the bar chord shape for a major chord on the A string is going to be the root with my first finger. I'm going to bar my ring finger, and it's going to hit the next 3 strings. Now, technically, that is the full chord. If you want to really finish it off, you could do this shape as well. And so instead of barring with my 1 finger, I'm actually going to do 2, 3, and 4, and then my first finger is barring to play the little note or the little string. All right? And in this case, what we're doing is having it be the 5th, okay? So if I do this here, we got root, we got 5th, we got root, 3rd, 5th. And there's my root, my octave root one more time if I really wanted to stretch over. All right, so there's my major chord. But again, what's usually a lot done more typically is that my ring finger will lay flat and bar, and I'm not going to worry about that note in the bottom because I am already, a minor bar chord on the A string is the same exact shape as the major chord on the E string. So, if you're going to practice a major chord on the big string, let's go back to our 5th fret. Okay? Work on getting that really good and sounding good. Now, because it's movable, take all your fingers and move them down to the floor 1 string each. And what I have now is a minor chord, the root of which is on the tip of my first finger on the A string. So the note here is the 5th fret, it's the note D, so now I'm playing a D minor chord. But again, I want it to be G minor, so I'm just going to move this shape up to where the note G is on the 10th fret. All right, so now we got a G minor bar chord. All right, very cool. The last chord is going to be an F major chord, and that's going to be on the A string as well, and we're just going to come down a whole step for that one. Same shape that we use for E flat. Okay, again, the shape there does have the little string at the top, but the higher you get up, the more cramped your fingers are going to be and the harder it gets to get that nice and clear. But again, just try to focus on getting this good with the ring finger, but the trick is to make sure you get the B string ringing out, okay? Because that is going to be the note that makes it a major chord instead of just a power chord. So let's take a look at the whole chord progression. We got C minor, we got E flat major, we got G minor, and then we got F major. One more time. C minor, E flat, G minor, and then F major. All right, so now let's get some funky rhythm going. All right, really fun. So this is a really good jam to practice getting this chord progression down. So if we scroll down, see that we have this at a slower tempo. Let me go ahead and play the backing track for a second. And this will give you something to kind of work towards being able to play. So this is at 95. 1, 2, 3. All right, so that essentially is a the chord progression there. And of course, you could ramp it up once you get comfortable with it. We have a slower tempo, or a little bit mid-tempo, I should say, 105. And then we have full tempo is 115, where you could really feel some energy with these chords. So if we spice it up even more. One, two, three, four. All right, so really cool. The other thing that barre chords give us the ability to do is do what I call pump muting. And you could see here, if you look at my left hand from this angle when I play this, you'll see that my hand's kind of pumping the rhythm, because what's happening is a good way to start is just to play the strings where everything. All right, so there you go. Let me know if that makes sense. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to do, that's pretty much all the stuff I wanted to cover right now on barre chords. Let me know if you guys have any other questions on that, if you want me to explain anything else. I had one other song I wanted to play for you guys, because we had a couple people write in. Len, which I'm not sure if Len's on here right now, but Len wrote in and wanted to know some questions about using major minor scales, when to use scales, all the different types of scales, major scales, minor scales, blues scales, and a couple other types. So this is something I'm going to do a whole nother lesson on, because it is one of those things that it's nice. It's a really in-depth question that you could do a lot with. The main idea is that if you're, especially again, if you're in that beginner to intermediate range, the minor pentatonic scale is king. That will all, no matter what you're doing or what song it is, you know, you could pretty much get away with using the minor pentatonic scale over anything. All right. The reason why is simply because it has 5 notes in it. And the less notes that are in a chord, there's less notes that go along in a scale that the notes connect. All right. In other words, if I have a power chord and there's only 2 notes, the root and the fifth, there's not a lot of notes. If I play a scale that has 7 notes, then there's 5 notes that are not being played in the chord behind it. So you start getting a lot of clash or notes that don't sound good. But when you have, hey, Len, there you are. All right, no problem, buddy. I was just jumping into stuff. Hopefully you didn't, I'm not sure if you were on earlier and kind of, yeah, I think I got things a little mixed up, but hopefully we're good now. So anyways, we're talking about the scales and what scales to use. So using that minor pentatonic should always be your first home base. Start with that no matter what, okay? Then if you're ready to move on, the blues scale only adds 1 note to the pattern. Okay, I think I have those shapes here. So if we take a look, let's jump off of our chord progression. And let me get rid of my screen capture so we can see a little bit more. So if we jump into looking at the minor pentatonic, there's, oops, sorry, that's the full minor scale. Where is our minor pentatonic? Oops, that's labeled wrong. Let's see, where do we have? There's our blues scale. I'll have to get our pentatonic up here. So anyways, though, this is the blues scale. If we take out the notes that's in the square, we have our pentatonic. Always our first go-to scale to use, all right? Then if we add in the blue note, we're going to have our blues scale. And that basically you could use just to sound more bluesy, all right? Now, it does take more knowledge to know what chords are being played in the chord progression that you're soloing over. We'll cover that in a different lesson because I want to make sure I have time to explain it fully. But to keep it simple, your major, your minor pentatonic and your blues scale, stick with those. Just knowing where to start them for your key is the main thing to understand. So in other words, if we say, hey, we're going to do a jam in C minor, like this song is here that we're doing, then start on C, play your minor pentatonic scale, play your blues scale, and you're good to go. All right? Again, we're going to do a different lesson on this altogether, so I'll save to go all in the in-depth stuff later on. All right, the other person who wrote in with a question was Don. And Don was wanting to know if I could teach or go over some Eric Johnson techniques. For those of you who don't know, Eric Johnson is one awesome guitar player. Certainly, known as a I'm going to call him a shredding player, but he's just a very tasty player. He's great at playing fast, clean runs. I don't do a lot with his stuff, but I have learned a couple songs. And if you do go to the website, if I'm on Rock Guitar Power, hang on, let me show this right now so that you guys could see what I'm going over. There we go. Okay, so if I go to the top here, I'm going to navigate to the guitar blog. And once this loads, so one of the tunes that I learned that was one of his electric tunes, I'm going to play so both of these lessons here, the first one here and then the second one where I talk about the solo and learning the techniques for speed. So if you really want to kind of dive into his stuff some more, you can kind of go there and check it out. What I'm going to play now, though, is one of his fingerstyle songs called Song for George. And can you guys hear that acoustic okay? Okay, so even though Eric Johnson wasn't really known or isn't really known as a fingerstyle player, this is one of the songs I heard on one of his albums. I forget what album it was on, but the song is called Song for George, and it's just a killer tune. So let me go ahead and play that for you, and then we'll close up shop because we're coming up on the hour. But again, if you guys have any other quick questions, write them in now, and I'll answer as best I can once we get done with this song. All right, so there you go. A fun kind of quick tune. That was called Song for George. And Tom, how do you hybrid pick like Eric Johnson? Great question. So what we're talking about there is if you look at Eric, a lot of times what he's doing is using his middle finger or even his ring finger, holding his pick like usual with, these two fingers. And then if we get some nice distortion on. What a lot of the technique is you're alternating your pick and then your middle finger. So in other words, if I take, all right, what I have down is my ring finger on the 12th fret of the D string. And my first finger is down on the 10th fret of the E string, okay? So is that a Squire Strat? Yes, it is. This is actually a Japanese Strat, and I love it. It's from the 80s. I have an American Strat, and I actually prefer this one. It's got this neck that just feels amazing, and if you could find a Japanese Strat, they're awesome. So it is a Squire, but the Japan thing makes a big difference, to be honest. I do like them a lot better than the China ones. And in this case, I just like it better than the American just because of the way the neck is. I did redo all the pickups in it though. So anyways, with the hybrid picking, what I'm doing is picking with my regular pick, but then my middle finger alternates in between. Now, if you notice, what immediately becomes an issue there is sustain, especially with thick distortion. And, you know, if you listen to any of Eric's tunes, when he's got some pretty thick distortion, he's just an absolute master at controlling the notes so that he gets a really clean tone by making sure that you're not hearing any extra noise or any extra ringing of notes. But anyways, if I play that, but now if I alternate the notes so they don't both ring out, tonic pattern, and use pull-offs, getting those to the point where you could play them at like 64th notes and just super quick is a lot of things that you hear from Eric Johnson. When you hear those lines that just stand out and you're like, whoa. A lot of times he's just ripping through scales, but using a pull-off, you know, a legato type of feel. Again, it depends on the song, but a lot of times that's one of the things that you hear from his sound when you know it's him and when you hear, you know, his soloing. So, great question. I love his playing. It's always inspiring to check out and try learning some of it. I'm a bit out of practice on getting that stuff really quick, but it's one of those things you want to commit to, even if it's just a short phrase of one of his solos. You know, just take it super slow, use that metronome, and, you know, and pace yourself and make sure you kind of just track your progress. All right, guys, thank you, and girls, thank you so much for coming along. Sorry I had some technical issues in the beginning. Hopefully the newer features with the screen capture and more video stuff, I'm trying to dial in all this whole experience that we could really get it fine-tuned and just really get to doing some really great guitar lessons. A lot more steady, too. I'm doing one a month right now. I want to bump it up to doing every other week and then every week. But the more questions you guys send in, the more topics that, you know, we have to cover, the easier it is for me to get on here and kind of do these. And by all means, write in, ask me questions, Mike@rockguitarpower.com or Mike@superguitarlicks.com. If you're not already a member on either of those sites, check them out. There's awesome guitar lessons on both of them. And if you have specific questions on something that you're trying to work on, email me and I can give you advice on exactly what to check out on the sites so that you can get right to learning, you know, the songs and techniques that you want. All right? You got it, Leonard. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Look for the replay. It'll be up on Rock Guitar